Hey there, in this video, I'd like to talk a little bit about how I go about studying written Japanese, both with digital copies of manga that I like and dead tree versions as well. Because I feel that reading is something that has significantly improved both my comprehension of the grammar and the vocabulary, and so I thought it might be interesting to you as well. And what's really nice about both of these approaches that I'm going to show you in just a moment is that I think they can be adapted to pretty much any language. Obviously, the language we're covering today is Japanese, but they could really be used with any language that you're interested in learning. So let's start by going over how I do this digitally. It's pretty convenient, and it's likely going to be the most convenient way for you to do it. So let's start with that. Now, the way I do it is I use a combination of these two applications, the first one being Mokuro and the second one being Yomitan. And like a good cooking show, I've already prepared these for us. So the first one is this one right here, which is Mokuro. It is an open source project, and essentially what it does is it transcribes pages of manga and turns them into web pages where you can highlight the text. So essentially, it takes an image of a page from a series and it turns it into some sort of a quasi web page where you can actually select the text and then do things with it, like use a dictionary or put it in ChatGPT or a couple of other things. So what's really nice about this project is that after you install it and you follow the instructions, it's pretty simple. You can then just point it to either a directory that holds the images for all the pages, or even a directory that holds multiple volumes from a series. And then it will use your computer to do the actual optical character recognition. And after you've run that process on a folder that contains all your images, the end result is something like this. It's basically a local web page that combines the individual pages into the volume. But now what you've got is if you hover over any of these characters, because it's done the optical character recognition, you can now select it and then paste it in a dictionary or use a large language model to help you translate it or whatever you want to do. So what's really nice about that is that otherwise you would have to manually type every single character into the dictionary or Google Translate or whatever application you're using. And with Mokuro, all you have to do is hover over any text, select it, and then paste it into whatever you want. So I also believe this is the only package that is going to work for Japanese because the machine learning that it uses has been trained on specifically Japanese script, so it's not going to work for other languages. Now, the second tool I combine Mokuro with is a dictionary, but not just any dictionary. It is Yomitan. And Yomitan, for anyone that has studied Japanese in the last couple of years, is actually the successor to the original Yomi-chan pop-up dictionary, which I believe the original developers kind of abandoned at some point, and then other developers came and then Yomitan was born. And so it's really nice because it is a Chrome extension. It works with all the different browsers that support Chromium. For example, I am in the Dia browser. I think Brave is also based on Chromium, so you could use it in that as well. And so this is what it looks like after you've installed the Chrome extension. You get a bunch of different features, and here's where you choose which language you want it to support. So as you can see, this one you can use with essentially any language that has dictionary files. After you've selected the language, you get a set of recommended dictionaries, and you can click on download. You can also import other dictionaries that you might purchase online, but the ones that are included are just fine. You don't need anything else. And then here at the bottom is where you can set the scan modifier key. So what this allows you to do is select any text, hit the scan modifier key, and instantly get your definition. And so what that looks like in practice is I've got another manga volume here. Just to show you what that looks like in practice, here I've got volume 7 from Yotsuba. As you can see, I hover over any piece of text and it goes from being the image to being the actual script that I can select. Or what I can do, now that I've got Yomitan installed, I just hover over the text, hit my modifier key, in this case Shift, and I instantly get a definition for that character or that word. And so that makes it really easy when I'm reading and I come across a word that I've never seen, or I'm looking at something that I'm not familiar with. It's also really nice because with the kanji, you get the furigana, which is the pronunciation, because otherwise I would not know how to actually pronounce this. And so it really helps me as I'm reading and I'm coming across words that I'm not familiar with, or I come across kanji that I might know the word for, but I don't actually know how it's written, and so I couldn't actually read it. It just speeds up that process significantly. And if you wanted to take this even further, you can also connect Yomitan to other tools like Anki, which is a spaced repetition application, which would add a little button up here that lets you click it, and it would take the entire sentence from where you've selected the word, copy it. You can also, I believe, enable a way that it takes a screen capture of that particular frame and include it in your spaced repetition flashcard system. And so if you're someone that does like to use flashcards or spaced repetition, you can combine this system with Anki to very quickly create a set of flashcards that are highly relevant because it's based on content that you're actually trying to consume. It's not just random words and random sentences that are coming out of a textbook or that you just pulled off the internet. I personally don't use it because I'm just not a big fan of Anki right now. I have a PTSD from using it a couple of years back where I was spending several hours a day going over my cards and it was not a fun time. So I've really kind of avoided that. And I prefer more to focus on mass input, which is just getting as much native content as possible, reading things in context, not artificial sentences and structures that you might find in textbooks that are meant for beginners. For example, this right here, Yotsuba, is a comic series for children. So this is something that Japanese children would be reading. And so the language and the grammar is going to be simpler, the sentences are shorter. So this is just generally a great series to use if you're studying Japanese. And that's pretty much it. Now, if you don't want to go through the hassle of actually scanning in the images and putting them in a folder and doing the machine learning, optical character recognition to get them into this format, these files already exist out on the web. All you need to do is Google for them. You'll find libraries of these for any series that's popular, and they've already been pre-formatted, and then you just open them and start studying. I'm not going to show you where those are because I don't want YouTube to take my video down, but I think with a little bit of Googling in about a minute or two, you can find them. So it's pretty easy. And so now just to quickly summarize, the way I do it is I add the volumes that I want to read in Mokuro. I set my preferences if it's the first time. So for example, the first time you open up Mokuro, you've got this little toggle right here in the top right-hand corner, and it lets you do things like switch it from right to left. You can also set it to do single page and also first pages cover, and that just kind of shifts all the pages over one because sometimes volumes will have illustrations that cover the entire span of the 2 pages. And so if the pages are offset, you're going to get like part of an image here and part of an image here when they should be aligned in the middle, something like that. So there's a couple of different settings you can choose here. And right here is the part I was mentioning, the Anki Connect. So there's a way to connect it with the Anki application if you have it on your desktop. And there's a bunch of different settings you can choose from. Like I said, you can go really wild with the Anki Connect. You can have it even generate the speech for the sentence, all kinds of things, if spaced repetition or Anki is something you're interested in. And once you've got it all set up, you just start your reading. And when you come across any unknown vocabulary or unknown kanji, that's when I use Yomitan to help me figure out what the vocabulary word is, or how you actually pronounce the kanji, or its meaning. And then the last thing I like to do, which is really nice, is when there's a sentence that's particularly difficult for me or the grammar just isn't quite grammaring in my head, I'll just copy the entire thing, put it into ChatGPT with the instructions, break down the grammar for me. And if you happen to be using a browser that supports some sort of large language model like this one, the Dia browser, I can just open up a little panel, paste the text that I copied from right here with the instructions, and it will break it down for me word by word and provide any additional grammar explanations so I can understand why it's conjugating in a specific way, why we're using one word versus another, that kind of a thing. And so it just adds an additional layer because sometimes when I'm reading, I'll have questions. I'll understand the overall meaning of a phrase or a sentence, but it might not always be clear. Why is it conjugated this way? Why is the order this way? And so the really nice thing about having some sort of an AI built into the browser is that you can very quickly get an answer to your question and continue reading so it doesn't break your flow as much. And so that's what this last step is referring to. Use an LLM to double check your understanding or break down the grammar if it's something that's kind of particularly confusing. And that's how I practice reading using Mokuro and Yomitan. And like you saw, Yomitan is actually available for any language. So if you're not studying Japanese, you could definitely use this. And it's available for any Chromium-based browser. Now let's move on to the physical reading because I do have a bunch of paper manga. So the way that this works is I actually do still combine some technology because I like to make my life a little bit easier. And the way that I do that is by using the Google Translate application and some sort of an LLM app on my phone. And this is done just to save me the hassle of having to deal with a gigantic paper dictionary that would take me minutes to find each word. Why do that when I can just have Google Translate do the optical character recognition and then use some sort of a large language model or an application like Jisho, and I forgot to mention that. Jisho, which is a really nice and free Japanese dictionary for iOS. And so now the way that this works is I take a photo of the page with the Google Translate application, and then I copy the text, I paste it or send it to the large language model because it's another app on my phone, so it's very easy to just share it to that application. And I ask it to either break down the grammar or to explain something to me. And so I took a couple of pictures just to show you what that actually looks like. So this is what the Google Translate application looks like on iOS. There's an option at the very start that lets you use your camera to live translate like a menu or a sign that you might see on the street, but it also allows you to take a picture. So I just pointed at the page, take a picture, and as you can see, it's already automatically detecting all the different pieces of text. Similar to what Mokuro is doing, obviously it's doing it much faster, and then you're able to tap and copy the text. And then I believe there's also an option down here to share it. So you could share it either to the ChatGPT application, the Claude app, or any other large language model that has an app available. And again, it just breaks it down for me so I can kind of make sure and confirm that, okay, I am understanding this, or if it's just one particular piece of grammar or a kanji or something, I could just send that. But generally, when I'm doing this with a paper volume, I will just copy the entire sentence or phrase and throw it in there just to kind of confirm that I've gotten everything right in my head. And that is it. That's how I do my reading practice, both in the digital world and the real physical world. For me, while doing this digitally is obviously much more convenient. For me, at least, there's something very nice about just dealing with paper, dealing with books. And so I do have way too many of these, and that's why I have to come up with a system. This is the one that I've found works the best for me so far. There might be a better way to do the optical character recognition. If there is, I haven't really found it. And the reason for that is because the Google Translate app is just so ridiculously fast. You point it at the page and it's already selecting all the text. It's already basically recognized everything. By the time you take the picture, you're ready to copy everything and throw it into a large language model, or even an application like Anki if you want to just save the vocabulary for studying with your flashcards later. So I hope that that was at least a little bit interesting. Even if you're not studying the language, there are different tools here that you can use regardless of what language you're interested in. So for example, pretty much everything would apply except the Mokuro application. Yomitan, as you saw, is a dictionary that works with any language that has dictionary files available. That's pretty much every language in the world. You could use large language models, again, with any language. For the physical version, there's nothing here that's particularly special about Japanese. The Google Translate app is able to recognize a ridiculous amount of languages and scripts, so this would work fine with pretty much any script in the world. And again, we're just combining it with a large language model. The only thing you might really need to swap out is the dictionary, because obviously you're going to need one for whatever language you're studying. Other than that, you can basically just copy what I do and study with your dead tree versions. So I hope that's useful. If you have any other tips on how to do this, either in the digital world or in the physical world, let me know. I'm always open to those. Like I said, this is just what's worked the best for me so far and what I feel is most convenient. But if you have a better way or a more efficient way, or just a different way, be sure to let me know in the comments, because I'm always interested in learning how I could do this even better. Other than that, I will see you in the next video. Be sure to like and subscribe if you want to see me do more videos covering how I study languages, if that's something that's interesting to you. So I will see you in the next video.